Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good afternoon to everyone. Good to see all of you again. But I'm sure there are quite a number of new faces, and the old faces have gone home since I first addressed you in my welcome address 3 months ago. First of all, I'd like to say a big sadhu to everyone, particularly to Pa Outsider for so graciously accepting the invitation of Taiping Insight Meditation Society to have the retreat in SBS, for being so accommodating. For I know that he's got very, very high Vinaya standards, and I suspect that he doesn't quite agree with some of our interpretations and practices of the Vinaya, but he has been very, very accommodating. So I think that is a very, very good example of tolerance and harmony, and that comes out of unconditional loving kindness. So I like to say very big sadhu to Sadhuji first of all. I would also like to say a big sadhu to all the teachers and the participants of this retreat for raising the spiritual energy of SBS. According to the Visuddhimagga, all of those people who try to practice samatha meditation, only 1 out of 100 or even 1,000 can succeed in doing the preliminary work. And out of those 1 out of 100 or 1,000 who can do the preliminary work of samatha meditation, 1 out of 100 or 1,000 of them can only manage to produce the nimitta. And out of the 100 or 1,000 yogis who could produce the nimitta, only 1 of them can get appana samadhi. So I hear that so many people here in this retreat have got jhanas, arupa jhanas as well. So this is way beyond the standards of Visuddhimagga, and I will say a big, big sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today is also a very rare occasion, according to what Sayadaw U Aggacitta said this morning. He talks about the 5 rarities, 5 durlabhas, difficult to get. Yeah, the arising of the Buddha, hearing the Dhamma, understanding the Dhamma, putting into practice, teaching the Dhamma, and also expressing one's gratitude. So we got all of these things here together. We are saying thank you to one another since the morning until now. And all of you, we've got so wonderful teachers here and so fantastic yogis that have gone beyond the expectations of even Visuddhimagga. So big, big sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu. It has also gone beyond my expectations. When I designed SPS, it was only designed for 20 monks. And now we have got 80 over monastics. Never in our dreams before, have we ever thought that SPS could accommodate so many, monastics, so many yogis who are so highly attained, right? Sadhu. But wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't say sadhu. What is there to say sadhu when we are just kalapas, right? Kalapa saying sadhu is the kalapa, chitta saying sadhu the chitta. However, I'm just joking, of course. As yogis, we must always learn how to move in and out of ultimate and conventional realities. That is one of those things that we must learn to balance in our life. So it's really a very historic and momentous event for SBS as well as for typing, because I don't think ever before have we had such, an auspicious and seriously meditating yogis coming together during this period of time. So that's why we have postponed our celebrations for Vesak to today to commemorate as well the 20th anniversary of Typing Insight Meditation Society, and making use of the presence of all you fantastic yogis to bless those who are coming for our celebrations as well. I would also like to say a very big sadhu to the organizers, SBS retreat team, and the staff for doing such a wonderful job in making sure that everything runs smoothly, although there are a few hiccups here and there. I must also say special thanks and sadhu to Limpo Tek for being the chief organizer. He has really handled the job superbly, especially in taking care of the visa problems of our foreign guests. SBS was created with the help and support of Buddhists from many different traditions, as well as non-Buddhists who are well-wishers of SBS. You can see that, even within a short space of 9 years, we could develop this place in the middle of nowhere because of the support that we got from the public. So it is only fair that although SBS was meant to be a monk training center, it should also share its facilities with its supporters. This beautiful environment just next to the forest with all these natural resources. I hope that all of you had a wonderful time here, and I'm sure you will agree that you enjoyed making use of these facilities. There are a couple of unique things about SBS. One of them is that it's the first Theravada monks training center in Malaysia, and it is also the first retreat center in Malaysia that is open to all traditions. Right now we are opening to Theravada Buddhist traditions of meditation coming from different schools. I'm sure that many of you have tried different methods of meditation before, right? Let me know. Could you put up your hands? Those of you who have tried Mahasi meditation before, hands up. Okay, how about those who have tried Goenka before? Hands up. Those who have tried Shui Umin before, hands up. Anyone tried Ajahn Chah tradition, Ajahn Brahm? Okay, Ajahn Brahm. How about Ajahn Kanha? Oh, just a few. And Bhante Guna Ratana. Oh, got a few. Okay. Ayakema? Okay, so you see that all of us have gone through different types of meditation before. And often when we go to listen to their Dhamma talks, they always say that theirs is the Buddha's way. One time, I was talking to one Mahasi meditation teacher, and I happened to mention the word Mahasi method, and immediately he corrected me. He said, no, not Mahasi method, Payani. Oh, Mahasi Ovarakam Payani. Oh wait, let me translate that. He says there's Buddha's method according to Mahasi instruction. Then we also attended another retreat in another tradition, and then in the Dhamma talk it says that this is the pristine method of vipassana that the Buddha himself meditated and transmitted to Burma. I'm sure that some of you have also heard this when you attended different retreats under different teachers, and so sometimes it causes conflict among ourselves. Now, who is right and who is wrong? And in a place like SBS, when we have so many different teachers from different traditions coming to teach, and when they make such claims, what sort of impact will that have on us as yogis and on the people who have been trying different methods of meditation. So the purpose of my talk today is to show that despite our differences in interpretation and practice, there can still be harmony and mutual respect if we know how. Now, this exclusive claims, is not something very novel. It has happened even during the Buddha's time. It is an ancient problem, I suppose. It plagued mankind right from the beginning that it started its spiritual pursuit. In the famous Kalama Sutta, the Kalamas asked the Buddha, "This is Master Gautama. They are recluses and Brahmins, who pass through our town, and they all claim that theirs is the correct path. And then they deprecate, disparage, and say bad things about other teachings. And they say only theirs is correct, others are wrong. And then another group will come and say the same thing. Theirs is right and others are wrong. So we are very confused. What should we do?" Actually, he translated correctly. I didn't say it correctly. I should have said, they asked which of them speak the truth and which falsehood. That's what he translated, right? I just said, what should we do? So he's more correct than me. I'm false. Okay, anyway, then the Buddha said, "Come, Kalamas, don't go by faith, by tradition, by hearsay, by various types of reasoning, by the charisma of a person, nor just because you respect that person as your teacher." So after the Buddha told them that, he said, "If you yourself know what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, what is wholesome is praised by the wise, and what is unwholesome is blamed by the wise, and you also know that yourself, then you should pursue what is wholesome and avoid what is unwholesome." In the ensuing dialogue between the Kalamas and the Buddha, he managed to convince them that lobha, dosa, and moha are unwholesome and are blamed by the wise, and the reverse, alobha, adosa, and moha are wholesome and are praised by the wise. When these things are pursued, they will lead to welfare and happiness. He then went on to talk about the 4 Brahma Viharas, which Venerable Umangala talked about last night. So you would know a lot about it already. Plus, I think some of you would have been doing that in your own meditation. So he talked about these 4 Brahma Viharas, and the Kalamas also agreed that these are things that are wholesome, and if people are engaged in them, then they will avoid from doing unwholesome things. In the end, he concluded that whether or not a person believes in the afterlife or believes in the law of karma, if one pursues all these good things, including the 4 Brahma Viharas, then one can be assured that one will only get good results. Now, this advice was given by the Buddha to the Kalamas, who were presumably not Buddhists. But this advice is also still very relevant today because of so many different spiritual practices available in the world, in the spiritual supermarket, so many products. But it is especially relevant for even Buddhists who prefer to be freelance Buddhists. They don't want to be labeled as Mahayana or Theravada or Mahasi or Pa'ao or Shehumin. They prefer to be freelance, moving from one place to another. For them, this could be a very inspiring sutta. The incident with the Kalamas involved ascetics and Brahmins who were not Buddhists. But what happened if such claims happen among Buddhists? To give you one example, this is not about happening among Buddhists, but an incident happened during the Buddha's time which motivated Venerable Ananda to consult the Buddha about that. And this is found in Samagama Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya 104, where the founder of the Jains, Mahavira, or in Pali we call him Nikanta Nadabuddha, he had just died, and soon after his disciples were quarreling and brawling with one another. So let's have a look at what they actually said according to Samagamma Sutta as it is preserved in our Pali canon. You do not understand this Dhamma and discipline. I understand this Dhamma and discipline. How could you understand this Dhamma and discipline? Your way is wrong. My way is correct. I am consistent. You are inconsistent. What should have been said first, you said last. What should have been said last, you said first. What you had so carefully thought up has been turned inside out. Your assertion has been shown up. You are refuted. Go and learn better. Disentangle yourself if you can. The matter was reported to Venerable Ananda by one Samanera called Chunda. And then together they went to see the Buddha and related the whole incident to him. And then Ananda expressed his apprehension that something like that might occur after the Buddha passed away. But the Buddha assured him that at that time there were not even 2 monks who disagreed on the 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas, the 37 wings of awakening or requisites of enlightenment. Then Ananda said, "Now, but Bhante, what I'm more afraid of is after you pass away, there might be some monks who might dispute about the Vinaya, about the Patimokkha and the Vinaya." So Ananda said that he felt that such a dispute in the Sangha would be for the harm and unhappiness of many, for the loss, harm and suffering of gods and humans. Then the Buddha answered, a dispute about livelihood or about the Patimokkha, about Vinaya, would be a small matter, Ananda. But should a dispute arise in the Sangha about the path all the way, such a dispute would be for the harm, unhappiness of many, for the loss, harm and suffering of gods and humans. From this Samagamma Sutta as well as the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, we can infer that these 37 Bodhipakkhya Dhammas, the 37 wings of awakening, are the core teachings of the Buddha. Right now, most, if not all, Buddhist schools and traditions agree on this. However, what they may disagree is on how to put them into practice. And if one school or tradition should claim that their method of practice is correct and others are wrong, this could actually lead to serious consequences. But even during the Buddha's time, there were already disputes about Dhamma and Vinaya. Since this is something that has to be settled through certain Vinaya procedures, this is defined in the Vinaya text, Sulavagga. What is the definition of a dispute? There is a case of dispute when monks dispute with one another. How? They say this is the Dhamma, this is not the Dhamma. Then they may say this is Vinaya, this is not Vinaya. Or they may dispute this was spoken by the Buddha, this was not spoken by the Buddha. Or this was practiced by the Buddha, this was not practiced by the Buddha. Or this was proclaimed by the Buddha and this was not proclaimed by the Buddha. Or this is an offense, this is not an offense. This is a light offense, no, this is a grave offense. This is an offense with the remainder, this is an offense without the remainder. This is a gross offense, no, this is not a gross offense. So this sort of dispute has also happened during the Buddha's time. So when people make claims, then how do we evaluate these claims? How do I propose to address this issue of what is the correct method of practice without causing confusion, animosity, and disharmony among the Buddhist community? Well, I propose to follow the advice given by the Buddha and the ancient Theras. And I'm sure that if you were aware of these principles, these guidelines set down by the Buddha and the ancient Theras, you would also try to follow them, wouldn't you? Since I've done different methods of meditation before from different traditions, and I've also read through a lot of extensive literature on different types of meditative practices, as well as read the scriptures myself. Through these years, I've compiled my findings on these principles, these guidelines. So today I want to share with all of you. And I have extracted them from various parts of the Tipitaka, mostly from the suttas and the Vinaya. So in essence, I will give you an overview. It can be classified into preventive and curative measures. And under preventive measures, it can be further classified into 1. Nurture humble attitudes. 2. Abandon the 6 roots of dispute. And 3. To cultivate 6 memorable things that create love and respect and conduce to concord and unity. But if, despite these preventive measures, if a dispute should arise, then the curative measures are 1. To meet cordially, and secondly, to evaluate the claims based on doctrinal and experiential criteria. Now let's go into more detail and look at the preventive measures. There are actually 3 subsections to the preventive measures. The first step is to nurture humble attitudes. And within that, the Buddha encourages us to be equanimous and objective when criticized or praised. This can be found in the Brahmajala Sutta, the introduction to the Brahmajala Sutta, where a Brahmin and his disciples were arguing about the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And on account of that, the Buddha said to the monks that if somebody should criticize the Buddha, Dhamma, or the Sangha, you should not be emotional about it, but should remain equanimous and objective. If you find that the criticisms are not justified, then you should point them out. And if they should praise you also, to praise the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, one should not be easily flattered, but be equanimous and objective. And if you find that their praise is justified and worthy, then you can admit them, acknowledge them. Another aspect of nurturing humble attitudes is to be cautious when professing a view. This can be found in Chanki Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 95. There the Buddha talked about the 5 grounds upon which our beliefs and opinions are based. And these 5 grounds are, first of all, faith, fancy. Fancy means your liking. And thirdly, oral tradition. Fourthly, personal theory. And fifthly, accepting another person's view. The difference between 4 and 5 is that 4, you do your own thinking and you come up with your own theory. Whereas in number 5, somebody proposes a theory or a view, you think about it, you find it reasonable, and you accept it. Let's question ourselves for a few moments. If we accept the view or the belief that it is possible to become an arahant in this very life, what is it based on? If you believe in the law of karma, the intricate laws of karma. If you have the view of that, what is it based on? If you believe that the Buddha actually existed, what is it based on? If you believe that man landed on the moon, what is it based on? If you believe that the Twin Towers, what is that called, the World Trade Center, was destroyed because of the terrorists, what is that based on? If you read any newspaper report, if you accept a doctor's prescription or diagnosis, what is it based on? Well, it's probably based on one or a combination of these things, right? So the Buddha cautioned that something that is accepted on any of these grounds may actually be empty, hollow and false, while something else that is not accepted could be true, could be unmistaken, could be factual. So, based on these 5 grounds, it is not sufficient for a wise person who preserves truth to come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If you believe, or you have this belief or view that it is not necessary to look into past lives or future lives in order to become enlightened, what is this based on? Or if you believe that it is compulsory, mandatory for a person to look into the past life and future life in order to become enlightened, what is this based on? One may argue that it may require a much higher standard of verification, both doctrinal and experiential, in order to come to this conclusion that only this is true, anything else is wrong. However, it is interesting to note that in this sutta, after talking about this, and the Buddha talked about how to actually discover truth, how to evaluate the virtues of a teacher, have faith in him, learn from him, and then eventually realize and arrive finally at truth. Even then, at the end of which the Buddha did not condone this attitude that one could say, only this is true, anything else is wrong. The way I look at this sutta, it shows that we should always be cautious and humble when professing a view or opinion based on any of these grounds or a combination of these grounds, by allowing an element of uncertainty, just like engineers always allow a factor of safety. At best, such views and opinions are merely working hypotheses that remain to be verified by our personal experience. Now, with regard to the path, Magga, and the way, the Patipada, unless and until one becomes a Sotapanna, Sakadagami, an Agami, or an Arahant, one's opinion about any method of practice for liberation will still fall within these 5 grounds. And even if one successfully attains to any of these stages of awakening through a particular method, that method is only relevant to your particular temperament. Let's get back to the headings. We were talking about preventive measures, and then one of the first aspects is to nurture a humble attitude. And we talked about being equanimous and objective when being criticized or praised. We also talked about being cautious when professing a view. Now, we are going to talk about being receptive to other people's views. There's an interesting account of an argument between a carpenter by the name of Panchaganga and Venerable Udayi. That's found in the Samyutta Nikaya. You can see the references in the printouts later. At that time, the carpenter Panchaganga was arguing with Venerable Udayi. He says that there are only two types of feelings, although Venerable Udayi says there are three types of feelings. And he says, oh, the Buddha only said there are two. You have good feeling, a bad feeling, and then the neutral feeling, because it's not bad, therefore it comes under good. Right? So there are only two, not three. So both of them were arguing. One says two, the other one says three. And finally, this Venerable Ananda overheard their conversation, their argument, and so he went to see the Buddha and related this whole matter to the Buddha. Then what did the Buddha say? The Buddha said that both of them were right. In fact, he said that he has spoken about many kinds of feeling, not just two or three, but up to 108 types of feelings, and according to different methods of exposition. Then the Buddha continued, when the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way, through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will not concede, allow, and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will become contentious and quarrelsome and engage in disputes, and that they will dwell stabbing each other with verbal daggers. Then the Buddha continued, but when the Dhamma has been taught by me in such a way, through different methods of exposition, it may be expected of those who will concede, allow, and approve of what is well stated and well spoken by others, that they will live in concord with mutual appreciation without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. We all know that the Buddha tailored his discourses to suit his audience. The main aim of the Buddha's varied discourses related to liberation was to present the Four Noble Truths in the best way, most suitable for the listener, so that the listener can benefit. So what works for some may not work for others, and vice versa. So we should always bear in mind that even if we are right, it doesn't mean that others are wrong. They could also be right too in their own ways. Perhaps the safest way is to be receptive. If we are not attached to our own views or opinions, then no matter what others may say, we can keep cool without feeling offended or flattered. And at the same time, we can also learn new things from other people's ideas which are different from ours. Let's get back to the conflict management measures. Now, under the preventive measures, the second part is to abandon the 6 roots of dispute. And these 6 roots of dispute are mentioned in Samagama Sutta itself. And the Buddha said that the root causes of dispute are disrespect towards the teacher, Dhamma and the Sangha, and not practicing the training because of 6 factors. One is angry and revengeful. Second, one is deprecative and prone to one-upmanship. Deprecative means belittling other people's views and opinions, and playing one-upmanship means trying to be better than others just for the sake of being better. Being envious and stingy, being deceitful and fraudulent, pretending that you have jhana when you don't have any, evil wishes and wrong view, and finally, adhering tenaciously to one's views. The last item on the list reminds me of one sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Twos, which I talked about in my opening address. It's about this Brahmin who asked Venerable Mahakaccana, why is it that lay people quarrel and dispute among themselves? Then Venerable Mahakaccana said it was because of attachment and obsession with pleasures of the senses, sense objects. Then he asked, why is it that Samanas and Brahmanas, ascetics and Brahmins, quarrel with one another? They are supposed to have renounced the world, they are not supposed to have any attachment to worldly pleasures and objects. So why do they still quarrel? Then Venerable Mahakaccana said, it's because of attachment and obsession with views. So obviously, if one is in the habit of guarding one's mind door, one will be able to recognize these unwholesome states when they arise and abandon them quickly so that they don't proliferate. Then if they don't proliferate, then a dispute can be avoided. That is why it's so important to be constantly aware of one's thoughts and emotions and intentions. Well, isn't it stated in the Dhammapada that the mind is a foreigner of all things, that it is the leader and all things are mind-made? The last aspect of preventive measure is to cultivate the 6 memorable things that create love and respect and conduce to concord. These 6 memorable things are called Saraniya Dhamma in Pali. And what are they? Quite simple actually. The first one is to have bodily, verbal and mental metta, publicly and privately, to your fellow Dhammafarers, to your fellow spiritual practitioners. Then the fourth is to share whatever gains that you have with one another. Don't be selfish. Number 5 is to have a common morality. And number 6, to have the same view that leads to the end of suffering. However, despite all these preventive measures, a dispute can still arise. While a dispute need not necessarily arise because of ill will, because of those unwholesome mental states that we talked about, it could also arise because of very good intentions. For example, an arahant, a learned and wise arahant, out of compassion, may want to point out certain practices and interpretations of a very group of influential monks who are doing things the wrong way. They are saying things which are not Dhamma as Dhamma, things which are not Vinaya as Vinaya. So this arahant, out of compassion, might start a dispute. So not all disputes are bad. Not all disputes are unwholesome. Some disputes are good, because a dispute is when people disagree, right? So an arahant is right, but those who disagree with him are wrong. So how do we prove who is right and who is wrong? So a dispute like that becomes a legal issue and has to be settled by certain Vinaya procedures. Well, the first thing is the disputing parties should meet cordially. And secondly, they should sit down together and agree on certain guidelines, Dhamma neti, Dhamma guidelines. Of course, not just any guidelines that they think of, but guidelines based on the scriptures. So the criteria are twofold. They are doctrinal as well as experiential. And even under doctrinal criteria, there is canonical and post-canonical. We can find some explicit doctrinal criteria on how to determine what is or is not Dhamma Vinaya in the suttas and in post-canonical literature. Looking at the suttas, first of all, in Mahaparinibbana Sutta, before the Buddha passed away, he reminded Ananda that after his death, there is still a final authority for the monks. He said, perhaps Ananda, it may occur to some of you, the teaching is without the teacher. We no longer have a teacher. But Ananda, it is not to be regarded in that way. The Dhamma and Vinaya that have been discoursed and laid down by me shall be your teacher after my demise. It is recorded earlier in the same Mahaparinibbana Sutta as well as in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Force, Sutta number 180, called the Mahapadesa Sutta, that the Buddha had proclaimed the four great standards to determine what is the Dhamma and Vinaya. Because in those days, we don't have any books, no tape recorders, no digital record of what the Buddha taught. People remembered things that they have heard and passed things from generation to generation orally. So these four great standards give us an idea of the scenario during the Buddha's time. He says that when a monk makes a claim that this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teachings of the Master, and I heard and learned it from the Buddha himself. Or you may say, I heard and learned it from the Sangha in a certain monastery with its elders and leaders. Or he could have heard it from many learned theras in a certain monastery, or from a learned thera in a certain monastery. Here again, the Buddha encouraged the monks to practice equanimity and objectivity. He said, in such situations, without rejoicing in or scorning the monk's words, the monk's claims, we should investigate to see if such teachings are included in the suttas or seen in the Vinaya. If they are, we may conclude that they are the words of the Buddha and they have been well learned by the speaker. Otherwise, if they are not found in the suttas, they are not seen in the Vinaya, then we may conclude that they are not the words of the Buddha and they have been wrongly learned by the speaker, and we should reject them. Well, notice that according to this set of criteria, no consideration is given to the interpretations of commentaries or elders. So if we adhere strictly to this guideline, any doctrine that cannot be found in the suttas or the Vinaya has to be rejected, as it is not the Dhamma Vinaya of the Buddha. But this is the province of scholars only. For how many of us have studied the whole of the Pitakas, the suttas, or the Vinayas to decide or determine whether a claim can be found in the sutta or in the Vinaya? How many of us actually have the inclination, the interest, or the resources, the time and resources to really do the research? How many of you? Well, if you can't do that, then if you listen to somebody's claim and you accept it, what is it based on? It is based on one of those 5 grounds that we talked about, right? It's either based on faith, or because you like it, because of it's your tradition, because you have your own theory about it, and finally because of another person's view. Well, if you accept anything based on any of these 5 grounds, then the Buddha said, if you really preserve truth, then it's still not sufficient to say only this is true and others are wrong. Nevertheless, although this injunction by the Buddha may be relevant during his time, we cannot now use that as the only yardstick. Why? Because we don't really know what the Buddha actually said. What we have are scriptures. And how accurate are the scriptures? Nowadays, with modern methods of multidisciplinary research, people are beginning to compare scriptures from different traditions in different languages. And we find that no one collection of the scriptures is perfect. these standards are very high. If anything that cannot be found in your corpus of suttas or Vinaya, then out it goes. But later teachers, after the scriptures have been canonized, came up with another list. This is the post-canonical doctrinal criteria. This list was first mentioned in the Milinda Panya that was supposed to have been written almost 900 years after the Buddha's parinibbana. This list of the hierarchy of authority was established by the Dhamma Sanghahakas, the 500 arahants who sat in the first synod, the first council, soon after the Buddha passed away. This set of hierarchy of authority was formulated for use in the Vinaya in order to help the Vinaya experts to decide on certain cases of committing offense. But it can also be applicable to the evaluation of suttas as well. Let's go through this list. The highest on the hierarchy of authority is what we call the sutta. Now, this is strange. They use the word sutta, but this is found in the Vinaya Pitaka. So the word sutta has a wider meaning than what we usually understand. Here it means the thread or principle that ties things together. And this refers to the whole Vinaya Pitaka. The second is the corollary to the thread or principle. And these are the four great standards in the Vinaya, which is a bit different from that we stated just now. The fourth is teacher's doctrine, Acharya Vada. And this teacher's doctrine refers to the commentary established by the 500 arahants who were at the first synod. Now this is difficult. The commentary that we have right now is a mixture, because when Buddhaghosa translated and compiled the commentaries into what we have right now, he worked with a number of commentaries. They were in Sinhalese, and then he found that there were inconsistencies in some of these commentaries, and so he tried to resolve the inconsistencies with the help of the views and interpretations of the Theras of the Mahavihara at the time. So he came out with this new commentary, which is now in Pali, and after that all the other Sinhalese commentaries disappeared. So we don't have any evidence at all. So we cannot now really differentiate what are those passages in the existent commentary that come from the 500 arahants and which came later. And the final one is personal idea. Now we have to be careful with the third on the list, because it says Acharya Vada, the doctrine of the teacher. It doesn't mean your teacher now. It means those teachers, the 500 arahants who were at the first synod, first council. So the views of your present teacher now will come under number 4. It is a personal idea. In fact, in the commentaries, we have a lot of Theravada, a lot of doctrines or views and interpretations given by the elders during the time when Buddhaghosa was writing the commentary or compiling the commentary. So certain areas where there are inconsistencies among the available commentaries in Sinhalese, then these Theras, these elders, would give their opinion. And Venerable Buddhaghosa would go through all of them, and sometimes even when he disagreed with them, he would give his own personal opinion. So you have actually, a whole combination of many different ideas that can be found in the commentaries themselves. So within the commentaries, Venerable Buddhaghosa and subsequent commentators after him have been very careful about distinguishing what is canon, what is commentary, what are the elders' opinions and interpretation, and what is his own personal interpretation. Okay, so even modern commentators nowadays, for example, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Analayo Bhikkhu, Venerable Thanissaro Bhikkhu. They also write commentaries in English nowadays. Venerable Thanissaro Bhikkhu is very famous for his Vinaya commentary, the Buddhist monastic code. And Venerable Analayo has written doctoral theses on the Satipatthana based on his research into canonical, post-canonical, and modern teachers' ideas about the Satipatthana. And he made it very, very clear. This is what the canon says, different Nikayas, different suttas, and then this is what the commentators say, these are what teachers nowadays say, and these are what modern meditation teachers say, comparing different traditions, different meditative traditions. Now, Venerable Analayo himself was a very ardent meditator before he started his PhD on the Satipatthana Sutta. So his work is not just an academic treatise, but it is a real survey of the theory and practice of Satipatthana from the past until today. Well, according to this list, you are supposed to grade the reliability of a claim according to this hierarchy of authority. But still, this is not easy. It still belongs to the province of the scholars, because you need to be able to recognize what is from the sutta, what is the commentary, what is a corollary to the sutta, and what is personal idea. So again, since we can't even be sure what number 3 really means, because now the commentaries are all a mixture, not only of the original commentary of the 500 Arahants, they are also now mixed with other Sinhalese interpretations. So again, this is also not a very, very reliable criteria to evaluate a claim. Most fortunately, the Buddha also gave 2 lists of experiential criteria. When I made a search in the CSCD, VRI Vipassana Research Institute CSCD of the whole Tipitaka, there were only 2 places in the suttas where the Buddha defined what is Dhamma Vinaya using experiential criteria. And this can be found in the Sankhitta Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Eights, Sutta number 53, a reply he gave to his aunt and foster mother, Gotami Mahapajapati, a list of 8 criteria. And he also gave another list of 7 criteria to Venerable Upali, also in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Sevens, called Satusasana Sutta. Let's look at the first one, first group of 8 given to Gotami Mahapajapati. The Buddha says that if you know of any Dhamma, any qualities that lead to the following results, then you can be sure that that is the Dhamma Vinaya of the Buddha. So you make note of this, very important. First one is, it leads to dispassion. When you practice that Dhamma or you read that Dhamma, it encourages you to be dispassionate. Secondly, it leads to being unfettered, to be free from the Sangyojanas. Third, to shedding. The shedding means to putting down, to shedding away your kilesas. Fourth, to modesty, to being of few wishes. 5, to contentment. 6, to seclusion. Seclusion means physical seclusion as well as mental seclusion, not getting caught up in your thoughts about other things. 7, to aroused effort, become energetic. And number 8, to being unburdensome, being easily supported. Not like some yogis here, which I hear complaints from the organizer, who are very fussy. They want this and they want that. They want to change their room. They want, all sorts of things, making a lot of demands. That's not the sort of Dhamma that the Buddha preached. The Buddha always said that you must try to be unburdensome, easily supported by people. Be contented with whatever that you are provided with. When you do a certain sort of practice, you should try to evaluate and see whether the practice that you are doing will lead to these things or not. And if it does lead to these things, You don't have to worry whether it's found in the sutta or found in the Vinaya, or in the commentary, whether it's the teacher's opinion. You can be sure that this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's instruction. But of course, this also comes from the sutta. So in the first place, you have to believe that this comes from the sutta. Let's look at the next list that's given to Venerable Upali. Now this one is a more high end. That one is low end, because that you can apply to preliminary stages of your practice. But this one looks like it's the ultimate aim. Again, the Buddha said the same thing. As for the qualities of which you may know that lead to utter disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to calm, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to Nibbana. You may definitely hold this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's instruction. Actually, these words are all synonyms of Nibbana that can be found in the suttas. On the other hand, if you want to apply it to a lower end, you can also gauge in the course of your practice whether as you practice more, you become more and more disenchanted with the lures of the world, whether you have less passion for sensual desires, whether you have more and more cessation of your worldly worries and concerns, whether you are becoming calmer, and whether the knowledge you have is something that is direct rather than something which you learn from books. Is it something that you really experience yourself? And when that really happens, you have self-awakening. This is when insight occurs within you. Of course, Nibbana refers to the calming, right? But there are various levels of Nibbana. You can have momentary Nibbana when you temporarily suppress your defilements. In fact, in the suttas, being in a jhana is also Nibbana. It's figuratively speaking, you are also in Nibbana because you have caused the cessation of certain factors, of the five hindrances, of Vitakka, Vichara, and Piti, and so forth. So for most of us who are not scholastically inclined, and even for scholars, these two sets of criteria seem to be more reliable, don't you think? Actually, these two lists of criteria agree very much with the attributes of the Dhamma, which we chant every day. Swakhato Bhagavata Dhammo, right? Sanditiko, Agaliko, Ehipasiko, Opanayiko, Pachatam, Veridabo, Vinyuhi. Right? So these are the attributes of the Dhamma that are experiential. Swakhato means well preached. Well, maybe that is not so experiential. That is, you have to accept that on faith. It is directly visible, sanditiko. Akaliko, it is immediate. Ehipasiko, inviting one to come and see. Opanaiko, worthy of application. Pachatam Vedidabo Vinyuhi, to be personally experienced by the wise. In several suttas, the Buddha was asked by several people. Some were Brahmins, lay people, some were wanderers, some were bhikkhus. And the Buddha gave answers that vary a little, but they all talk about being aware of lobha, dosa, and moha when they arise in you. And he says, when there is lobha in you and you realize and you are aware that it is there, and lobha is not there and you know that it's not there, that is the time, that is when the Dhamma is directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, worthy of application, and to be personally experienced by the wise. In one particular sutta called Sandittika Dhamma Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Nines, Sutta number 46, Venerable Ananda was asked by Venerable Udayi, the Dhamma is directly visible. The Dhamma is directly visible. Friend, to what extent is it said by the Blessed One that the Dhamma is directly visible? Venerable Udayi asked Ananda. So this is the answer given by Reverend Ananda, not the Buddha. Right? And then Ananda says, well, when a bhikkhu dwells, having attained the first jhana, that's when the Dhamma is directly visible in a figurative way. So he went on to say the same thing for the first, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, up to the arupas, and up to Nirodha Samapatti. And he says that all these are instances of how the Dhamma is stated to be directly visible in a figurative way. Must make a correction. He talked only until the fourth arupa ayatana. That means until neva sanya na sanyayatana. Because from a non-figurative direct way, the Dhamma is said to be visible, directly visible, when a bhikkhu, having totally, completely transcended the fourth arupa, and then having attained Nirodha Samapatti, and then after that having seen with wisdom and attained the destruction of the cankas, then only, non-figuratively, the Dhamma is directly visible. So let me ask you, during the course of your retreat here, was the Dhamma directly visible to you? Don't think that the Dhamma is directly visible only when you attain the first jhana to the arupas. Remember, the Buddha said at the beginning that if you are aware when lobha, dosa and moha is present, and you are aware of them absent when they are not there, that is also when the Dhamma is directly visible. It is immediate, it is inviting one to come and see, it is worthy of application, it is to be personally experienced by the wise. So, in the course of this retreat, if you have noticed lobha, dosa and moha within yourself, at that time, the Dhamma was visible to you. So don't despair, even though you didn't get jhana. But experiencing these attributes of the Dhamma at the lower end doesn't mean that it's useless, or it's ineffective, or it is to be looked down upon. There's one particular sutta called the Attinukho Pariyaya Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, where the Buddha, after asking the monks, he answered, there is a method by means of which a bhikkhu, apart from the 5 grounds that we talked about just now, apart from faith, apart from fancy, apart from oral tradition, apart from personal theory, apart from reflective acceptance of a view, that bhikkhu can declare final knowledge. That method, what is that method? That method is, if a bhikkhu perceived an object with any of the 6 senses and is aware of the presence or absence of lust, hatred or delusion internally, then are these things to be known by faith? Are these things to be known by fancy, by oral tradition, by personal theory, by reflective acceptance of a view? Then the bhikkhus answered, no. Of course, these things are things that you realize yourself through your own personal experience without having to rely on any external authority, whether it's faith or fancy or tradition or whatever. So the Buddha said, this bhikkhus is the method by which a bhikkhu, apart from faith, fancy, oral tradition, personal theory, reflective acceptance of a view, can declare final knowledge of an arahant. So even by watching your mind, when it reacts to any of the 6 senses, can lead you to arahantship. We all know that faith is very important. In fact, it's one of the 5 factors of exertion called the Padhaniyanga, found in the Padhaniyanga Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 5, Sutta number 53. And faith is one of those faculties that we have to develop in order to get enlightened. However, our compassionate Buddha also could tell us a method for people, for truth seekers, whose faith faculty is much weaker than their wisdom faculty. And they can still practice and they can still get total liberation. Of course, I'm not saying that faith is invincible, but you can look at this sutta that there are certain exceptions to the rule. And I'm sure that people who find the Kalama Sutta inspiring will also find this sutta very inspiring, because you don't have to rely on faith, you just have to watch your mind. Well, I've covered a wide range of subjects in my attempt to share with you the guidelines for conflict management laid down by the Buddha and the ancient Theras. But now, let me summarize before I conclude. So the conflict management measures by the Buddha and the ancient Theras comprise of preventive and curative measures. Under preventive, we have 1, to nurture humble attitudes; 2, to abandon the 6 roots of disputes; 3, to cultivate 6 memorable things that create love and respect and conduce to concord and unity. And then the curative measures are, if a dispute does arise, to meet cordially and evaluate the claims based on doctrinal and experiential criteria. So in conclusion, this is my proposal for harmony in diversity based on the above guidelines. Well, the best thing is to prevent it from happening, and so to nurture humble attitudes. First of all, try to be equanimous and objective when criticized or praised. Keep cool when you are discussing views, opinions, and beliefs. Now check if your motivations for speaking are related to the 6 root causes of disputes. If you find that they are, don't speak, keep quiet. And you can only do that effectively if you cultivate the habit of guarding your mind door. Guarding the doors of the senses, particularly your mind door, is step number 2 in the Buddha's scheme of the gradual training, which I outlined to you at the beginning of the retreat. I don't know whether you remember. Number 1 is guarding your precepts. Number 8 is developing the jhanas. So step number 2 is guarding the doors of the senses, including your mind door. Okay, the second thing is to be cautious when professing a view. Remember that all our views, most of our views, are based on the 5 grounds. And if they are based on the 5 grounds, like the Buddha said, it is not sufficient for you to come to any definite conclusion that only this is correct and others are wrong. They must always try to allow for an element of uncertainty, because what you believe in may be wrong, but what you do not believe in might turn out to be right. And finally, be receptive to others' views. As we can see in Panchaganga Sutta and many other suttas, the Buddha tailored his discourses to suit the audience, and he preached differently according to different people's temperaments. So what may work for you might not work for others, and vice versa. We have to remember that. Although we have very clear-cut doctrinal criteria to evaluate a claim, it is clear-cut only in principle, but in practice it is almost impossible to determine what are the authentic words of the Buddha. And that is also the province of scholars. Most of us do not have the inclination, interest, time or resources to really study the scriptures to find out what is the true words of the Buddha. I think that for many of us, the most applicable criteria is the list of experiential criteria. But if you do have the interest, capability or resources or time to study the Dhamma Vinaya, and especially if you're a local Malaysian monk, you're most welcome to join us here in SBS, where we try to balance study and practice. Then you'll be able to distinguish what is canonical, what is commentarial, what are teachers' interpretation, and what are personal views. But let's have a look at the experiential criteria again, because for most of us that will be our guideline. Okay, to review, there are 14 here altogether, and if you find that the method of practice leads to these things, to dispassion, to being unfettered, to shedding, to modesty, to contentment, to seclusion, to aroused effort, to being unburdensome, to utter disenchantment, to cessation, to calm, direct knowledge, self-awakening, and nibbana, then go ahead. I wish to add that these results should be successively apparent in the beginning, middle, and end of the practice, not only after the attainment of Theravadin Maggaphala. I'm stressing the importance of experience over doctrine only because I want to avoid any dispute over exclusive claims. For even the most learned scholar can be biased and attached to his own views and interpretations, even being self-righteous about propagating his understanding of truth by denouncing other interpretations. The experiential criteria that I quoted from the Buddha involve not just meditative experiences, but the totality of human moral experience reflected in one's bodily, verbal, and mental conduct. Further, this set of criteria comes from the suttas, so it is doctrinal as well. In fact, mere meditative experience without a sound doctrinal basis can be dangerous. For example, in the 62 types of wrong views listed in the Brahmajala Sutta, 20 or 32.3% were based on misinterpretations of meditative experience, while 42 or 67.7% were mere speculations. The commentary, however, gives a different set of figures. According to one reckoning, 47 out of the 62 or 75.8% were based on misinterpretation of meditative experience, while only 15 out of the 62, which is 24.2%, were mere speculations. There is a saying, theory without practice is useless. Practice without theory is dangerous. So in order to have the correct interpretation of meditative experience, one needs to know enough doctrinal teachings. And for this reason, all truth seekers are encouraged to balance study and practice. So, as a final word, if you are a learned meditator, you can make use of both the doctrinal and experiential criteria. But if you are not scholastically inclined, then you can make use of the experiential criteria listed out just now to ascertain whether the practice that you are doing, that you have chosen, is really the Buddha's teaching or not, whether it's a real Dhamma Vinaya or not. If it passes the test and it suits you, because practicing it makes you gradually reduce the intensity and frequency of the defilements, go ahead and practice accordingly until you attain liberation. Feel free also to encourage others to follow suit so that they can also reap similar benefits. However, if they find another more suitable method that conforms with the Buddha's experiential criteria, even if it differs from yours, rejoice and encourage them. Marvel at the richness and versatility of the Buddha's Dhamma Vinaya. When we have the fortitude to be faithful to our conviction and yet have enough metta to be accepting of those who think and practice differently, we will be mature enough to enjoy the blessing of communal harmony in diversity. And Venerable U Mangala has to add, we will be able to help all those who think and practice differently with the purest intention and deepest compassion. Fortified with a pure mind, sincerity and compassion, when we offer criticism, we can be internally at peace when our criticism is rejected. And we will never be easily provoked into incurring defilements when our views are pointed out, rightly or wrongly, to be wrong. Again, U Mangala concludes, having fortified our heart and mind with Dhamma, we will always have harmony in our mind in all situations. That will be the real root cause for the blessing of communal harmony in diversity. Blessed is the arising of the Buddhas. Blessed is the preaching of the true Dhamma. Blessed is harmony in the Sangha. Blessed is the spiritual pursuit of the united. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.